Hundreds of this type of aircraft flew with the United States Air Force Tactical Air Command in various bombing and other related functions for over 2 decades of successful service. The model also served with the Air Forces of Taiwan and Pakistan, and in both cases, as with those in US service, saw combat with distinction. They were the last of a long line of bombers built by the Martin Company. When production of the B-57 was concluded, the company went out of the aircraft manufacturing business to concentrate on missilery. While the B-57 fitted perfectly into a specific United States requirement, it was actually designed by the British and was the first overseas combat aircraft to be bought by the Air Force since the First World War. The reason for this was simple. It was a question of the mission parameters the new plane was to fill, parameters that were first identified with other aircraft less than 10 years before. Amongst the antecedents of the B-57 was another high-speed twin-engine bomber from the Martin Company, the B-26. The B-26 was originally designed as a classic medium bomber to operate from fairly high levels, carrying a quite respectable bomb load, but with a shorter range than the B-24 Liberator or the B-17 Flying Fortress. But as the benefits and methods of tactical air power became more fully understood, the B-26 was also used at lower levels against key points in enemy supply lines. As the Army Air Force developed its tactical use of air power, the planes, directed by controllers on the ground with the troops, became coordinated with the land forces as aerial artillery. This system developed relatively spontaneously, as heavy single-engined US fighters had devastated targets, often with an emphasis on communications. Perhaps the best compromise between the heavier B-26 and the single-engined fighters like the P-47 Thunderbolt was the Douglas Invader. This plane was designated as an attack aircraft, given the number A-26, in reflection of its combination of a bomber's substantial internal bomb load with the speed and flexibility approaching that of a fighter. The A-26 was a superb piece of flying technology. Its heavy forward firepower enabled it to strafe enemy positions with fighter-like concentration, while it retained capability in more conventional bomber duties. Coming late in World War II, it was rushed into production as the most suitable design for the rapidly developing tactical use of air power. The Air Force Command were now convinced of the importance of the tactical attack plane, disrupting the enemy's supplies and reinforcements by destroying road and rail transportation behind the front and harassing the enemy's attempts to regroup on the battlefield. As the war went on, the invaders flew from forward bases just behind the lines. Because of the proximity of the bases to enemy territory, they were within striking distance of enemy fighters and needed their own aerial protection, provided by aircraft like the P-61 Black Widow, a sophisticated purpose-built night fighter. By war's end, the importance of tactical air power was fully accepted, and when the Air Force was given its autonomy, a separate command was formed with this in mind, the Tactical Air Command. Of course, in the post-war years, all interest in aircraft procurement and design focused upon jet propulsion and the potential for aircraft of greater speed. To a certain extent, this tended to blind the planners to the lessons of the war, and the division between fighters and bombers, which had existed in pre-war thinking, was reconstructed. There were single-engined fighters with ground attack capability, and there were medium bombers, like the 4-engined North American B-45 coming online. But the B-45 had been designed for conventional use, to drop bombs from considerable height while in level flight. It had limited load and was to be used in large numbers to do any significant damage. In battlefield conditions in Korea, again the need for a filling of the gap between fighter and bomber arose, just as it had 5 years earlier in the World War. The only capable aircraft available was the piston-engined A-26 Invader, now confusingly redesignated the B-26. Despite its ability to fill the role, it was a World War II plane, doing business in the jet age. Together with the other World War II piston-engined planes, the B-26s filled the gap in Korea and provided the tactical attack needs, but at considerable price, reflecting their vulnerability. Clearly, there was a gaping hole in the planning. What was needed was the jet-powered equivalent of the A-26, and there had simply been no serious expectation or provision for this. There was one exception. The Martin Company were working on a project, the XB-51, which was a plane that was clearly designed for tactical use. The B-51 employed many innovations, not least of which was its 3-engined format with 2 jets attached to the forward fuselage and a third buried in the rear of the plane just ahead of the fin. It also used fuselage-mounted tandem main wheels and outrigger supports.